Hey, everybody. This episode of Our Kids Play Hockey is brought to you by our title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena. Look, we all want our kids to succeed in hockey, but let's face it, finding training that's both effective and enjoyable can be a real challenge, and not to mention expensive and a total drain on time, especially if you have to drive to the rink, pay a private instructor. There's so many reasons that money gets spent on this game. But that's where NHL Sense Arena steps in. It's a virtual reality training game that brings the rink into your home that takes off-ice training to a new reality. It's designed to improve hockey sense and IQ, something that's lacking majorly in the game today for both players and goalies. And you get unlimited access to over 100 drills and training plans from top coaches and players that can be played anytime, anywhere, with drills approved by USA Hockey player and goalie development directors. Look, improving mental hockey skills at home has really never been more fun, and any hockey player that uses this is going to have a blast. All right. I've used this before on my own, and it feels like you're so immersed in an arena, you sometimes forget you have a headset on. And again, it's not being on the ice, but it allows you to work on some of these skill sets like scanning, as I said before, hockey IQ, looking around the rink, making the right plays, that getting those repetitions in now as a hockey player are super important for your development. So NHL Sense Arena is giving all the listeners an exclusive offer for $50 off an annual plan when you use our code Hockey Never Stops at checkout. Again, that's Hockey Never Stops. All you got to do is go to hockey.sensearena.com. Again, that's hockey.sensearena.com. Use the code Hockey Never Stops, and you'll save $50 on your annual plan of NHL Sense Arena. Make sure to check that out and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Our Kids Play Hockey. This is the part 2 of our interview with Pete Whitney. We're going to dive right back into it. This one's all about how to develop a program from scratch, something Pete did with Post University, starting a NCAA program with only a few months to prepare, which is really incredible, all the way to bringing them to a league championship game before handing the team off. Great episode to hear about how those teams are developed. Also, the holidays are really right about here. This is probably your last chance. Check out us at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. Email us so we can send you our team deals for the holidays or our individual deals. We've put together a lot of great stuff that will save you money for the holidays. So if you're looking for that last minute gift, you still have time. Email us directly, team@ourkidsplayhockey. Just put in the subject line, I want to know about your gifts for the holidays, and we'll send it right over, or check out ourkidsplayhockey.com. Without further ado, enjoy the part 2 episode with Pete Whitney, coach, right now. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to part 2 of our interview with Pete Whitney. Again, 3rd time on the show, technically now, Pete. Great to have you here. I'm Lee Elias. I'm joined, as always, by my best friends in the world, Christy Casciano Burns and Mike Benelli. And we're just going to pick up this episode right where we left off. We were talking with Pete about a lot of mailbag things. We had some great questions from our audience, which he answered and gave a great episode. So go listen to that episode if you haven't already. If you skipped ahead, go back and listen to the one previous. And Pete, we wanted to talk about today on this episode how to develop a program from scratch, which is something you did at the collegiate level. I am going to throw it right to you, just talking about the experience of A, how does that opportunity come up? B, what are the thoughts that go through your head of like, okay, from scratch here, this is new. What is even the first step you take in that situation? Who's around you? All of it. I'm going to sauce the puck to you for that right now.
Okay. Well, for me, the part about building a program was actually one of the most attractive things because I've always enjoyed that piece of it. You know, I may or may not mention it at some point. You know, my family was in horticulture way back when. You know, I bought a business from my dad that was just basically a real cottage industry that, you know, we ended up shipping up to Maine, down to Jersey, out to Western New York State, wholesale retail. So I love building and creating and what ifs, like, or what could be's. Mm-hmm. So creating a program from scratch was kind of the ultimate what if or what could be's, because literally there was nothing. For me, it was roughly a 2-year process where I would have on and off conversations with the president of the university, and they were looking to add a men's hockey program and then a women's hockey program later on. So it became conversations where one day in March, I went and sat with the president and an associate AD, and they said, we'd like to offer you the job. Can you create this program? And I said, well, sure. When do you want it? And they said, well, we'd like to start playing in September. So this was in April. So I wanted the job. So my answer was yes.
There you go.
Yeah, it could be done.
Of course.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, I can do this. So from there, it was a bit of a whirlwind, right? Like I started with, first off, getting every single junior hockey program in the US, because now I'm looking for players. It's second week of April at this point,
Right.
and not a whole lot of players around. So I'm trying to build a roster. So there was that. There was a communication with, like I said, just about every in the US. I didn't go international at that point, just because there's a lot of things in college admissions with international that could slow the process. And I had 4 months, so I didn't really have time to slow a process. So that was the biggest one. Connections that I might have had in junior hockey, that I had developed, some that I didn't have, but I knew that I had to put myself out there, introduce, and just try to find the right individual. So finding the right individual has always been the issue in a positive way, not a negative issue. And for me, when I first started, I wanted guys that liked the thought of being a pioneer. You get to do something that no one else has ever done. You get to be the first class of this university. So I did that. I was able to put a group together in that first year. And along with that, as that was happening, I was scheduling games. I was uniforms, apparel, stick deals, everything. So we got all that in place. And that was our first year. And then we began to play games. Mostly the first year was all club games. And we were fortunate. We played, our first game was against another team in Connecticut, and they were a very, very good team. Had like 9 losses, I think, in 2 years. And we ended up winning that game in overtime, the first game ever. Yeah. So we're like, well, this is pretty easy, right? Nothing to it. So, which was obviously not the case. So we continued to build from there. So there's 2 approaches, right, to building. There's the mechanics, which is creating your roster, securing your ice times for practice, securing your ice times for games, uniforms, scheduling, etc. But to me, the most important piece, and this is something that we tried to create from the beginning, was a holistic piece, right? The treatment of the entire person, taking into account the mental factors, the social factors, right? The pressures that they were going to face as NCAA athletes, because a lot of these guys early were people that were not sought after, right? So trying to get them mechanically to become collegiate hockey players, then also teaching them what it meant to be culturally a collegiate hockey player. Those were the big challenges. And that was, the first year. The second year, we began to improve the schedule, insert an NCAA team here or there, had some successes early on. As a club program, we're always an NCAA program, but we play club teams because in Division II, you've got the clearinghouse, right, which is a minimum GPA, core course based on your core courses. So there were a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and we always ran it that way. And as we improved, we started to get the better players. But because at the end of the day, you got to show some reason why you're going to come to me as a new program, as opposed to one of the other 80 plus Division II, Division III established programs. So we got to that point. I can stop there if you want. If
Oh,
you have
sure.
questions, Brad, or just keep rolling.
Yeah,
Whatever
well, I
you
want to
want.
interject
We got questions.
because I like this, but you're obviously how can I put this lightly? You're a seasoned coach, so you know, right, the ins and outs of what the process is. I mean, you've come from very, very established programs, right? Not these aren't like overnight successes. The programs that you have been involved in prior to the college program build, right, were like real legacy programs. So what would you give, what advice would you give to maybe a younger coach, a first-time coach, somebody really just, getting this great opportunity? Wow, you get to grow, you get to build something from nothing. Like, what are some of the pitfalls you think you avoided that maybe another coach would fall into just based on not age, but just experience, really?
Sure. I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make, especially if you're trying to establish a program, is sacrificing skill over substance, right? So when you get to be at a certain established level of a program, you can have a player on your team who might be a handful if you have established a legitimate culture for your team, and they will help keep that, not only help keep that person in line, but I've seen that eventually that person learns that, you know what, this is actually the right way to go.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen the opposite. I've seen guys just bring in, this kid here. Oh, this kid played D1, didn't work out. I can get this kid. I can get that kid. Well, there's reasons that you can get kids. There's reasons that they're not where they were. And then I'm not saying they're all negative. That's not the case. But you have to do your due diligence to really know. And again, the same kind of thing. Like I talked about that question that I was asked about, tell me about the parents. My question was, level with me and tell me about the kid. Is this a kid? I would ask the question, is this a kid that you would want to either date your daughter, or B, would you have this kid over your house for Sunday dinner every Sunday? And they wouldn't even have to answer the question. You could tell by the amount of pause time.
The old, like, he could score goals though. He could score. He could score goals. He could score goals.
Right. When it goes to when I ask those two questions, let me tell you something. This kid is a gamer.
Right. I think that's a pitfall and in full disclosure, Coach Whitney and I have probably talked about this way too much, that, offline, right? That we all fall into I've got to win right now. So what's the fastest way for me to win on the scoreboard? Forget about culture, forget about what it might look like down the road. But you, because of the way, the opportunity you had, right? You had to almost reverse engineer the fact that I don't need to win tomorrow. The byproducts will be winning, but I don't need to find a way to win based off of putting together a group of skilled players that fit this mold. I've got to find a way to build a program so that when I do bring in that outlier, that kid can conform to my environment rather than control the environment.
Right, 100%. I mean, you got to ask yourself the question, because early on, successes may be few and far between, right? Just because you're competing with so many established programs. So do you want to bring in someone that can deal with that, or someone who can't deal with that? So more importantly, bring in the right personality, the person that can actually deal with adversity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to have adversity, right? And you can't sugarcoat it. Like, you can't, to get a kid, you can't have conversation. Listen, we're going to be so good when you're here. I got to tell you, we're going to win some games. I never approached it like that. I said, what I can tell you is, this is what we're going to establish as a culture. We're going to be outstanding on campus. We're going to be the best student athlete we can be that a 2-3 or a 3-2, whatever it can be. We're going to be the best student athlete we can be. We're going to be known on campus as the team that does the right things socially. Right. And then we're going to be out into the community too. That's what we're going to do. And when we get that, we're going to start to get support from the student body. Administration will recognize that. Then we begin to get support from administration. Now we're establishing a culture of where kids want to be, because in today's world, they talk about everything.
So let's dive into this culture side real quick. Because
Yeah, and I had a
yeah.
question too, because how did you control the dissension, Pete? Because you said in that first season, 9 losses. So you had loss after loss after loss after loss. You're at your 9th loss. Now kids aren't showing up. Other students aren't coming to games anymore because you're pegged as the losing team. You got kids who are frustrated. They haven't experienced the joy of winning a single game. I can imagine it must have been really tense after the 9th loss.
Well, actually, we won our first. We won our first.
Oh, you won your first. Okay.
Yeah, then we probably had 9 losses. You're probably right. Then we probably had 9 losses.
So you
after
have
that.
to look
Christy,
back
because
at
Christy,
that-
so all you
that
do is
first
throw
one.
you just show film of the first one every week. Don't
You
forget
just
that
show the
one.
first
Don't
one.
forget that one. Don't forget that one.
Don't forget that one. Yeah.
Yeah, player of the week. You
There
said,
you go.
but I mean, like anything else, you said goals, right? That's what you do. You set some sort of a goal. So our goal may be limiting shots on goal. Our goal may be something like block shots. Our goal is not wins and losses, because wins and losses come as a byproduct of everything else you do.
Right.
And that doesn't matter if it's the team that I first started coaching in 2015 or the team that's playing now in the 22-23 season. That doesn't matter. All those other things have to remain in place in order for you to continue and gain success.
Hey, Pete, before we continue, just are you on a laptop?
I am.
Could you tilt the screen back a little bit? You're when you lean forward, you're kind of cutting your own head. That's perfect. Yeah, I didn't want your head to be cut off the whole episode, and Caitlin will cut this out. I just wanted to do that. So let me dive back in. So Pete, this is great stuff. You know, again, talking about culture, I want to make sure the audience understands that, at least for me, when I'm starting an organization, developing that culture is by far the biggest and most important aspect of developing a team. And I want to be clear, this could be a brand new team, or if you're reestablishing a team. And I'll tell a quick story in a minute how this works at literally every level. You know, I've had the privilege to kind of help rebuild a couple programs, which again is very similar from starting, where you have to start with the culture. You said this earlier, we're building something here. We're building something long-term here. And when you get the buy-in from the players on that, Christy, kind of to your point, your question, suddenly the win is not the win-loss, right? It's, hey, we're going to get better every game. We might take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 2 steps back and 1 forward, but together we're going to build something here. Every successful program I've been a part of had to take that approach, and that had to be reestablished. From everything from, if it was an established team, do you know the history of this team? Or if there was no history, you're going to be the history. You're going to be the legacy. You are going to be remembered for establishing something where NCAA players from years who are not even out of middle school right now when we're starting are going to be part of. And I think that's incredibly important. And look, just to give you all an idea of how important this is, and this is gonna be a funny story. It might get some eye rolls. You know, I was asked to join a men's league team that had never played before, new organization, right? And we got killed first game. I think 8-0, 8-1. Second game, same thing. And then they asked me to kind of talk to the team, which I was really hesitant about because it's an adult league team. But I kind of said what we just talked about. Of guys, listen, this isn't about winning a men's league game. This is about finding the little things we got to do to start to compete. Let's just compete, right? Then the next game, we started to put some of these basic things in play. We lost in overtime. Then the next game, we won a game. So again, yes, it's an adult league team. It's not serious hockey. But my point is, we developed a different culture of we got to do this together. We got to find a way forward. And it worked. It's worked in college hockey. It's worked in pro hockey with the teams I've worked with. It obviously worked at Post with you, right? So just talk again about what was the culture you said. What was some of the wording you used? You mentioned that to players that we're going to build something here. How did you sell that? Obviously, when I say sell, I don't mean used car salesmen sell. I mean, how did you sell that to the athletes? And how did
Oh.
you develop it too?
Right. So in conversations, again, talking about bringing in the right people, right? Finding out what's important to them. What have they done? Like when they were in high school, you go back to their history in that. And pretty much that first year, everyone I had on that team mentioned at some point things like community service, helping out with a program here and there, maybe an after school kind of thing at a grammar school, whatever it might be. They all, or they talked fondly about their home life, because I would ask them about, you know, brothers, sisters. They would talk fondly about that. So you knew that you were going to get an individual that cared, right? So now it was just a matter of giving them something new to care about, which is exciting when you can add the athletics piece to it. And I can take the fact that deep down, I know who you are, because that's even to this day, right? Like in the recruiting process, you got to know who your players are, because things are not always going to go well, regardless if you're an established program or not. And how do I know if you are someone that can deal with and face adversity? Are you someone that that can't? If you can't, I'm probably not going to recruit you to begin with. But establishing that as drilling down to what is important to them as a person. And the other piece of that too, and I had someone mention this to me, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is you generally, as a coach, you generally recruit people who in some fashion are you. Just like when we create friendships, right? We create friendships and bonds, relationships with people who are similar, like-minded, same types of goals. You tend to recruit that kind of a individual as a player as well. So once you have that piece in common, you can build off that. Now we can add the athletic piece, the commitment, the training, the accountability, right? Sharing a passion for what we're doing. We can put all those things together with the commitment to have one goal and set that one goal, where we sit in meetings and we talk about what those goals are. And then we talk about how do we get there? What does that mean on the ice, off the ice? What do all those things mean? So obviously it's an extensive process, but it's really a lot of fun to have that type of interaction, right? You go back 30 years ago, it was like, coach says this, you do that. Don't talk to the coach, right? Don't say anything to the head coach. That's why we have assistant coaches. You can talk to them and maybe they'll relay it to the head coach. So being really involved in it and showing your student athletes that you actually care about who they are as people and about the program, then you can both care about the program together.
Yeah,
That's a
so
great quote.
I think going with that, right? That's one of the reasons why we talk about and coaches like you talk about, you know, why you have to be genuine to who you are. I mean, right? Because players see that, parents see that. When you're in the recruiting process, you have to be genuine to the type of, you can't try to be a different coach than you are just on the surface, right? Because it all boils up. At some point, they're going to say, "Oh, this is actually what the coach is really like, and this is not who I came to play for." So I think knowing that, and we're talking about, you know, growing a program from scratch, and I would even relate this to even at the youth level, right? What were some of the ways then, knowing all, like, you know, how you had to frame the season and how you had to frame your recruitment process? What were some of the things you did to bring your staff in? Like, did you try to find staff members exactly like you, or did they have different roles, or did they have different expertise? Like, where did you you know, make sure that the workload was divided up to benefit the program and yourself and the early success?
Right. I mean, early on, I did the recruiting because I was the face of the program. So I was the one going all the ranks, making all the phone calls on that. Later on, as we began to start the season, I was fortunate to add an assistant coach who is actually the head coach there now, who I had known since he was 13 years old. helped guide him in certain situations in his life too. We had a really good developed from coach, player to a really good legitimate adult friendship, where we could talk about literally anything in our lives. And he played high level of hockey in college, played some minor pro, so it was a great addition as far as that went. So I was very fortunate with that. So now we've got that in place, but the teaching continues on every level. I remember one of our first games, walking by our locker room before a game, and it was completely silent. And he's like, why aren't they listening to the music? I said, they don't have music. He said, well, why don't they have music? I said, because it's something apparently we're going to have to cover to tell them that, hey, bring music and get yourselves going. I said, you have to approach it early. And this was very, very early on. They, as if they don't know anything, not as if they're not smart, but they don't know. Because again, you've started with a group of individuals who didn't have many opportunities. So they were never really part of the cool kid group, so to speak, right? So you had to teach them everything, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun because every day was a new day. Every day was something new. It could be the simplest thing, like, hey, you know what? Somebody should probably bring in a boombox, and we should probably turn on music and get ourselves going before a game.
And building those new traditions. So
Right.
let's fast forward a little bit here, right? So 1 or 2 years goes by, you have some established culture, you have established rules, you have established a program. Right now you're trying to turn towards being a little more serious, right? And now you're armed with a few things at this point. A few years down the line, you've got upperclassmen now that have grown up in the program. You've got a group of kids that are returning that understand how you work, how the team works. And now you got to start seriously. Okay, I can recruit to get to the NCAA division that I want to be in. Walk us through the turn. When did you realize, okay, hey, we're turning this direction now. We're becoming legitimate. And then obviously I'm going to end the episode off with kind of your handoff, right, of the team later on. But I'm sure there was a moment, probably around year 2 or 3, like you said, that it's like, hey, we can start putting the foot on the accelerator now. How did you know that moment was coming?
I think part of it is from just wins and losses, and another part of it, I think, is intuitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of know. Just at some point, that you can rely on your buddy. You can't really say necessarily why that is, right? You can rely on your friend. So some of it was intuitive. At that point, I felt it was right to create a full NCAA schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So every team we played was an NCAA team. The next piece, and this was really critical in the development of the team and the program and moving forward, was getting into a league. We had a captain that I brought in as a freshman, and in the recruiting process, one of the things I guaranteed him was, I said, before you graduate, we will be in a league. And then I thought on a daily basis, why did I say that? So that became one of our missions.
That's awesome,
And
though. Yeah.
it worked. In his senior year, we became a member of the NE10, the Northeast 10. And that accelerated the process, because I feel for the teams that are in situations where they're independent.
Right.
It's early on, you have a certain amount of momentum because you're new, it's opportunities, but at some point, players need to play for something.
Right.
So
the dog totally agreed with you, by the way.
yes, that was a
Good
yes.
point. Good point.
Yes.
That's perfect timing.
So I could tell that once we got into the Northeast 10, that was a difference maker.
Right.
In recruiting process, in how we were perceived, legitimacy, everything. That was a huge difference maker. So we got in, and then my last season, when I retired, was our second year in the league, and we got to the finals.
Wow.
So that was a culmination of all those years, of all those 7 years, 7 total years with the COVID year thrown in for good measure.
Did you have a moment that last year when you were kind of coaching in that final of, wow, look at where we're standing right now. Look where we're skating right now. Did you have a kind of a full circle moment there?
I don't think I had, I wouldn't say I had a full circle moment. I'm always very realistic.
Mhm.
And I think pretty pragmatic in my approach to everything. Is I knew that's where at some point we would get to.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily know that, yeah, we're going to do it in our second year in the league, but I knew that we would be good enough. I knew that the recipe was good enough so that the meal was going to taste real good at some point.
That's a super fantastic coaching metaphor right there. I'm going to give you 5 stars for that alone. But no, hey, listen, you know what? Caitlin, our producer, is always saying thoughts become things. And I think that that's exactly what you're saying too, right? Is that I love that we had the recipe and we knew it was going to work, and it worked. They had a belief in that. You know, one thing I want to talk about too. So a lot of development of programs, and again, just for the audience, I just realized we didn't do this. So when you look at the NCAA, obviously there's 3 divisions. There are leagues within those divisions, and then there are independent teams that are looking to be placed in a league where they're new. There's a lot of different reasons why a team might be independent. So I think sometimes the younger parents hear NCAA and they think, oh, it's just an NCAA league. And it's actually much more in depth than that. Same thing in women's hockey, so forth and so on. But one of the crossovers here, the parallels here, is that starting a new organization in hockey is actually not much different from starting a business. And what you find out when you start a business is there are some people that excel in that 1 to 5 year kind of startup period. And then and I'm not equating this to you, Pete, but then they hand it off to people that can kind of really expand the business. Now, no matter what side of that you're on, business or hockey, when the time comes to hand it over, sounds easy, but it can be, I mean, it's your baby, right? It's something you've created. And for some people, again, maybe for the pragmatic, it's a little easier than not, but if you're comfortable with it, can we talk about when it started to come into your mind of, you know what, I think we're ready to hand this off or to bring somebody else in? Can you walk us through that process? So the baby was born, you raised the baby made it to the finals of a league championship. And then you decided, you know, it was time to move on. Can you walk us through that and the thought process?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I expect loyalty. I mean, I try to cultivate that with players, staff, and that. And when Timmy was with me for 7 years, he worked 2 jobs so that he could be part of this.
Wow. Yeah. Then this is the head coach now for everybody listening, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Tim Richter. And I told him that this is going to be yours, because I honestly, like, I have friends who have been assistant coaches at teams for years, and head coaches that told them, you know what, this is going to be yours in 2 years and 3 years, and they have a pretty good season, and all of a sudden that head coach signs a 3-year extension.
Right.
And I could never be that guy. So for me, it was a perfect solution to many things, right? I mean, I had been fortunate to everything I've ever done in my life. I've been lucky. You know, there's that saying, you know, if you love your job, you don't work a day in your life, which is partially true, but there are those days where you sure do feel like you're working. But for me, it was a situation where I had brought the team to where I thought I wanted it to be. So then I had to really look deep within and say, so what is going to be the longevity of that team? Right? Right. The longevity of that team is not going to be a 67-year-old coach. That's not going to be the longevity. At what point does it make sense to reward an individual that has been fiercely loyal? So there's no question why they are there.
Yeah.
So that added with the point that that summer, Tim and his wife also had twins. It seemed like, now is the right time to do this for him because he was there for me. So
Wow.
that's
Yeah,
what
and he gets to get out of the house, which is great.
Mike gets it.
Please get me a full-time job
No,
where I have to recruit.
I love that you brought up loyalty. I love that you brought up cultivating that, and that you were able to hand this off to someone that you trusted, that it was in good hands. Look, there's a lot of cutthroatness in the business of hockey at the pro and collegiate level, and you didn't subscribe to that, which I kind of love. And it just goes to show, you equate this back to starting the program. That's exactly why you were chosen for that type of character, for that type of personality, and understanding loyalty is important and culture is important. And this person now has some stakes to do a good job because he needs to keep his job, but you've basically imprinted that onto him. I'm guessing, right? I mean, and Tim is probably now raising the next level of assistant coaches and players, and you can sit back from where you're at and be very proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, I get to enjoy it because actually I just started a position of all the games are broadcast on the Northeast 10.
Yeah.
So I get to be the color commentary guy for all the home games.
There you go. So your professional broadcasting career starts here, and your consolation prize is being on this podcast with us every once in a while.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I just wanted to add.
It's fun. Now I get to observe it, right? I get to,
right.
Because everybody there are guys that I recruited, so it's fun to watch and say, you know what, this is really good.
Yeah,
we're better than we were last year, which is what you want. You need to improve every year, right? No knock on who we had, right? But that's athletics. You strive to get better every season, and just to watch it and comment on it is really kind of fun.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to being genuine and being who you are, right? And when you hire your staff, if you're just a guy, if you're a coach who says I'm hiring you, but understand I'm going to do everything to promote you, whether it's internally or externally for a different program. I mean, look at all these great coaches out there that aren't leaving their positions, right? But they're going to be the best advocate for saying, oh, there's an assistant coaching job open up somewhere else, or there's a head coaching job. I'll be the first one to write a resume. Like, I'm the first one to broadcast that you're the best person at this job. And you'll see that's why you get more coaches, right? Why you get more people to help you, because you can be a part of that process, whether they think they're going to come in and roll into your position, or that they're going to be able to, you're going to be a strong enough person to know that you're going to develop a coach that may be coaching against you and recruiting against you, in 4 years. So I think that's great to be able to go into that as an employer, knowing that your employees have that the ability to move on and they're not stuck in that. Even in athletics, right? You still feel like you can get stuck in a position.
Oh, it can be tense.
And you're like, I can't see how I'm going to get out of this, and this guy ain't going to ever leave. So how do I progress in my own development as a coach?
Right. And that's an individual who isn't going to support it because they don't want you to leave, because they know that you're probably one of the reasons they still have their job.
Right. Right. Look, great coaches develop other coaches. And then, look, I'm sure nobody goes into New England with the Patriots and thinks, well, I'm taking that job one day. You go there to study Bill Belichick and then most likely go to a team and become a head coach, and you probably not win a Super Bowl, but that's just the way that has played out. But my point is that if you have clear understandings, and like I said, Pete, you said this a few minutes ago, of like, oh yeah, 3 years, this will be your jobs. Coaches, be careful with that. You got to be careful with that, because you can't turn back. And Pete is a man of his word. We got a few minutes here, Pete. So I just want to ask this kind of final question for me, and then I'll open up to Christy and Mike. Mike, Christy, I appreciate you sitting here through this. I know you're listening and taking notes. It's a real simple question. What was the biggest challenge you faced over your tenure in developing that program, and what was your greatest moment in that program, in your opinion?
Certainly the biggest challenge was creating an actual program itself in 4 months.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, that's going to be hard to top that one. And I mean, there were just so many moments. But my biggest gratification on any win were two things. One thing was the look of dismay on an opposing coach when they felt like you shouldn't have beaten them. And the second thing was the joy on the faces of my players when we did beat them.
That's a great answer. And any coach here has felt both of those. Yeah, listen, there's a reason they chose you, and doing it in 4 months is no easy feat, but you did it. And again, now you're competing at one of the highest levels. And again, you've had players that you've coached go to higher levels. I just think it's an amazing story. That's why we wanted to share it with the audience today. Christy, I did want to throw it to you. I know we have a minute left. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just love that he found the players that fit this program, that he knew they had to be resilient. They had to know that it's going to be a great big uphill battle. And you kept them all together, because I've seen teams fall apart, especially when you don't have that strong foundation. And that was the key to your success there, is the character of the kids, that you built upon that.
And we talked about that. Yeah, we talked about that, Christy, right? Building your foundation out of stone is hard, because stones are big and they're heavy. We could build a foundation out of sand very quickly, but the first storm comes and the sand foundation's gone. So to your point, for sure.
And you are A+ with the metaphors today. That's a great one.
That's gonna be a lot of
Mike. How don't you don't do metaphors that good? Why don't you do metaphors that?
No, I can't. I have a real difficult time riding the storm usually, and persevering through the height of the waves. But I think it's
as most do. As most
exactly.
Do.
Exactly. No, he's good. He's a good metaphor guy. That's why we like him.
You need someone steering the ship. You steered the ship here today, Pete. Again, first off, thanks for being here. A little 2-part episode with you. We'll have you back again. And for those of you listening at home, obviously, you have questions for Pete, send them over, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. But before I do the full sign off, Pete, just want to thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your knowledge, and give us some pearls of wisdom here today on the show.
I love being part of this, and I think it's great what you guys are doing. I listen to the other episodes, and I think everybody should.
Well, thank you.
Right. That's another good. You have to come up with a better metaphor than that, but I do agree that that's pretty good.
Yeah, we'll take it. So, look, that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Again, check out all the episodes wherever podcasts can be heard, or you can always head over to ourkidsplayhockey.com if you want to look through the library. For Christy Casciano Burns, Mike Benelli, and Pete Whitney, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for listening. And again, feel free to email us all the time. We love hearing from you. team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. It's a great way to communicate with us. And yeah, we're getting close to the holidays, people. Enjoy it. Enjoy this time of year. The weather turns. Your kids turn. It gets crazy. Have fun with it. Stay present. Enjoy the moment. And we'll see you on the next edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Take care, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.